The physics of divine unity, God, quantum mechanics, and notions of good and evil. Part 3. Prophets, Teachers, and the Internet. The nature of divine connection. Within the framework of possibility, where reality exists as expressions of a single consciousness, varying degrees of source connection naturally manifest among temporal experiments. This variation emerges organically, just as a crystalline structure naturally forms regions of varying density, or a neural network develops areas of stronger and weaker connections through use. The spectrum of connection. The degree to which temporal experiments maintain awareness of their unity with source varies naturally across a spectrum. This variation serves the framework's inherent tendency toward balance, much as pressure differentials in nature spontaneously move toward equilibrium. Some temporal experiments remain deeply embedded in the illusion of separation, while others naturally maintain clearer awareness of unity while in temporal form. What appears as enhanced source connection in certain temporal experiments is simply a more direct expression of what already exists in all, the natural state of unity. These expressions manifest not through the mind's observation, but through heart consciousness. Framework stability. The presence of temporal experiments with clearer source connection emerges naturally where needed for framework stability. Like a river finding new channels during flooding, or a forest ecosystem generating pioneer species after disturbance, these expressions arise organically where destructive probability densities accumulate. They manifest as natural counterbalance to separation. Their influence spreads through natural resonance. Their effects ripple through the framework like waves through water. Their presence helps maintain overall equilibrium. This stabilizing function requires no external orchestration. It is simply the framework's natural tendency toward balance expressing itself through temporal experiments. This understanding may offer new perspectives on historical spiritual phenomena and their role in maintaining framework stability through time. Prophets as probability stabilizers. When destructive probability densities accumulate, natural rebalancing emerges through temporal experiments with enhanced source connection. This follows directly from our understanding of energy states. Just as quantum systems naturally seek their lowest energy state, consciousness generates stabilizing expressions to counter regions of high energy instability. These expressions have historically manifested as prophetic figures during periods of peak destabilization, demonstrating how the framework naturally maintains equilibrium through minimum energy pathways. Mohamed and the unification of scattered beliefs. 7th century Arabia existed in a state of profound energetic instability. The region had fractured into more than 100 distinct tribal groups, each operating under different systems of governance and adhering to their own traditions. This political fragmentation mirrored an even deeper spiritual chaos, where a complex pantheon of over 360 deities created competing frameworks of belief and practice. The resulting social fabric was torn by blood feuds and tribal warfare, creating self-perpetuating cycles of violence that drained energy from the system. The economic landscape added to the instability, with wealth increasingly concentrated among merchant classes while poverty grew among the broader population. Moral deterioration manifested in widespread practices of female infanticide and exploitation. This fragmentation represented a high-energy state, requiring constant input to maintain, like particles forced into excited states. Within this context of peak fragmentation, a natural rebalancing emerged through Mohammed's temporal expression. Through his engagement and influence, scattered spiritual understandings naturally consolidated into coherent monotheism, while fragmented social practices found integration within a unified, ethical framework. Tribal identities transformed into broader collective consciousness, and economic practices moved toward greater equilibrium through the institution of zakat and the prohibition of usury. The rights of women were established for the first time in the region, including inheritance rights and protection from infanticide. The stabilising influence extended far beyond spiritual realms. A unified legal system emerged through Sharia, while the Arabic language and writing became standardised, creating a common medium for communication and understanding. Stable trade networks developed under new ethical guidelines, and scientific and mathematical traditions flourished in this more stable environment. Perhaps most significantly, a unified cultural identity formed, providing a foundation for sustained stability. These changes represented not a designed intervention, but the framework's natural tendency towards stability, like water finding its level. The rapid spread of Islam across the region demonstrated how quickly probability states can shift when aligned with natural unity. Moses and the establishment of moral framework. The accumulation of separation within enslaved consciousness manifested a profound balancing expression through Moses. This temporal experiment emerged amid conditions of extreme disconnection from source, where generational enslavement had created deep psychological separation among the Hebrew people. The Egyptian polytheistic system reinforced hierarchical division, while forced assimilation threatened cultural identity. Family structures broke down under slave conditions, and there was no unified moral or legal framework to provide stability. The energetic state of the Hebrew people under Egyptian bondage represents a classic example of forced high-energy configuration, a system maintained in an unstable state through constant external pressure. Physical oppression required continuous energy input to maintain, while psychological fragmentation created destructive interference patterns throughout the collective consciousness. Cultural dissolution threatened the very existence of collective identity, and spiritual disconnection from unified consciousness reached critical levels. Through Moses' expression, foundational principles reflecting unity awareness took form in ways that could be grasped by consciousness heavily conditioned by bondage. The establishment of a monotheistic framework provided a central point of stability, while the creation of the Ten Commandments offered a unified legal code that could govern social interaction. Regular spiritual practices helped restore rhythms of connection to source, and a renewed sense of cultural identity emerged through shared experience and purpose. Abraham and the foundation of monotheistic understanding. Within a context of extreme polytheistic complexity, Abraham's temporal expression emerged as a natural crystallization of unity awareness. Mesopotamian society had developed elaborate systems of belief that required enormous energy to maintain. A complex hierarchical pantheon of deities was managed by priest classes who maintained power through religious complexity. Elaborate temple complexes and complex priestly hierarchies consumed resources, while extensive ritual requirements and sacrifice systems further destabilized the framework. The rigid social stratification prevented natural flow toward equilibrium, creating sustained patterns of destructive interference. Abraham's direct recognition of underlying oneness amid apparent multiplicity established a foundation that would support future expressions of monotheistic understanding. His influence created new probability patterns through radical simplification of spiritual understanding and emphasis on direct personal relationship with divine. The rejection of human sacrifice and emphasis on ethical behavior over ritual represented a shift toward lower energy states of spiritual practice. The profound simplicity of his connection to Source contrasted sharply with the elaborate spiritual systems of his time, demonstrating how clarity naturally emerges from complexity when consciousness aligns with unity. This established patterns that would influence all future prophetic expressions, providing the foundation for three major monotheistic traditions and a model for direct divine relationship that persists to this day.